The horizon is a blur of heat and grit. 10,000 Songhai warriors, the most feared fighting force in West Africa, stand in formation behind a living wall of 1,000 cattle. The beasts low and stomp, hooves churning the red earth, a barrier of muscle, horn, and fury, designed to break any cavalry charge before it begins. Across the scrubland, the Moroccan invaders look like ghosts materializing from the dust. 4,000 men, their ranks thinned by the unforgiving Sahara crossing. They are outnumbered more than 2 to 1. By every conventional measure of medieval warfare, they should not win this battle. They do not charge. They do not raise their scimitars. They do not scream war cries. They simply kneel. A Spanish mercenary, one of hundreds recruited for this impossible expedition, raises a glowing slow match to the touch hole of his arquebus. The moment stretches. The Songhai cavalry, legendary riders who have conquered territories from the Atlantic forests to the salt mines of Taghaza, wait for the familiar rhythm of battle, the thunder of hooves, the clash of steel, the test of courage and horsemanship. Instead, they hear something that will end their world. Boom. The sound is like the earth splitting apart. It shatters the desert morning with a violence that transcends war. This is the sound of one age dying and another being born in fire and smoke. 1,000 arquebuses discharge in a synchronized volley. White smoke billows across the battlefield like a physical manifestation of the future devouring the past. The Songhai cattle, magnificent beasts that have never heard the crack of gunpowder, go instantly, catastrophically mad. They do not charge toward the enemy as intended. They wheel around in blind, thundering panic, trampling their own masters into the red earth. Warriors who have survived a dozen battles are crushed beneath the hooves of their own livestock. The carefully planned defensive formation disintegrates into chaos. As the Songhai infantry scrambles to regroup, the second volley of lead balls tears through their quilted armor. Men fall in rows. The third volley follows. The fourth, the mathematical precision of firearms warfare, is dismantling the courage of warriors who do not yet understand that bravery alone cannot deflect bullets. By sunset, the greatest empire in Africa, an empire that stretched 1,000 miles along the Niger River, an empire whose libraries held hundreds of thousands of manuscripts, an empire whose scholars debated astronomy and jurisprudence while most of Europe, huddled in ignorance, is being systematically destroyed by a weapon it doesn't even have a name for yet. The Battle of Tondibi will last only a few hours. The empire it kills has been building for over a century. The year is 1460. The city of Gao sits on the eastern bend of the Niger River, like a jewel dropped carelessly onto the edge of the Sahara. Here, where the great river curves northward before beginning its long journey to the sea, the pulse of commerce beats with a rhythm that has enriched kingdoms for centuries. Arab traders arrive with salt from the mines of Taghaza, white gold harvested from beneath the desert floor. Merchants from the forest kingdoms to the south bring ivory, kola nuts, and enslaved captives. European goods filter down through North African intermediaries, fine cloth, metalwork, paper for the city's growing community of scholars. And everywhere, always, the glitter of gold dust changing hands, the precious metal that makes West Africa the envy of the Mediterranean world. Gao is not the largest city in West Africa. That distinction belongs to Timbuktu, 2 weeks' journey downriver. It is not the holiest. That honor goes to Jenne, with its magnificent adobe mosque. But Gao has something those cities lack. It is the capital of the Songhai people, and the Songhai are tired of bowing. For 2 centuries, Gao has paid tribute to the Mali Empire, the great power that once stretched from the Atlantic Ocean to the borders of modern-day Nigeria. But Mali is dying. Not quickly, not dramatically, but with the slow erosion that claims all empires. The tributary system that once bound West Africa together is fraying. Provincial governors grow bold. Vassal states test boundaries. The emperor in distant Niani issues commands that arrive late and are obeyed even later, if at all. In Gao, the Sunni dynasty, traditional rulers of the Songhai people feel the ground shifting beneath the old order. They have been patient vassals. They have paid their taxes in gold and cowrie shells. They have sent their warriors to fight Mali's wars. But patience, like tribute, has its limits. The city itself embodies a fundamental tension that will define the Songhai Empire for its entire existence. In the marketplaces and along the waterfront, urban merchants, many of them Muslim, many of them literate in Arabic, many of them connected to Trans-Saharan trade networks, conduct business according to Islamic commercial law. They pray in mosques, study the Quran, and look to Mecca as their spiritual pole star. But travel beyond the city walls, into the villages along the river, into the agricultural lands where the Songhai people have lived for 1,000 years, and you find a different world. Here, the old ways persist: spirit worship, ancestor veneration, ritual specialists who claim to control rain and fertility, diviners who read the future in the patterns of thrown shells. These are the traditions that predate Islam by centuries, the beliefs that form the Songhai worldview long before Arab traders brought a new faith across the sand. The Sunni dynasty must navigate both worlds. They accept Islam for the political and economic advantages it brings: connection to the wider Muslim world, legitimacy in the eyes of educated elites, access to literate administrators who can run a complex state. But they cannot afford to alienate the traditional Songhai populations who still hold to the old customs and who form the backbone of their military power. This balancing act is precarious. It is also about to become irrelevant. When Sonni Ali takes the throne in 1464, he is already a legend among his own people. The accounts describe him as a man of extraordinary physical presence and tactical genius. He has spent years leading military campaigns for his father, learning the geography of the Niger River Valley, understanding the rhythms of seasonal warfare, building loyalty among the warrior class. He rejects, immediately and completely, the role of tributary king. Mali can issue demands from its crumbling capital. Sonni Ali will not answer them. The Songhai are no longer vassals. They are an independent power, and he intends to make them the dominant power. But Ali's vision goes beyond simple independence. He looks at the Niger River and sees what the old Mali emperors never fully grasped. The river is not just a highway for trade, it is a weapon. Control the river, control the cities that depend on it for survival. Control the cities, control the wealth they generate. Control the wealth, build an army that can defend and expand that control. He begins assembling the largest war fleet West Africa has ever seen. Hundreds of canoes, each capable of carrying dozens of warriors and supplies. The Songhai have always been river people, but under Ali, they become something unprecedented, a naval power in the heart of the Sahel. The transformation from vassal state to independent kingdom happens not with a declaration or a treaty, but with the simple, brutal fact of military power. The Mali Empire is too weak to enforce its claim. The Songhai are too strong to acknowledge it. The old order dissolves not with a bang, but with a shrug. And Sonni Ali, watching his war fleet assemble on the Niger, knows that independence is only the beginning. 4 years into his reign, Sonni Ali turns his attention to the prize that has haunted every West African ruler's ambitions: Timbuktu. The city is in chaos. For decades, it has been dominated by Tuareg Berbers from the desert, fierce nomadic warriors who have made themselves the city's unwanted masters. The Tuareg rule with the casual brutality of occupiers who do not depend on the city's prosperity for their own survival. Scholars are harassed. Trade is disrupted. The delicate ecosystem that made Timbuktu the intellectual capital of West Africa is being strangled. When Sonni Ali's war fleet appears on the Niger in early 1468, Timbuktu's population prepares for liberation. They have sent word to Ali, practically begging for intervention. They expect a savior. They get a conqueror. Ali's forces sweep through the city with systematic violence. The Tuareg are driven out, as promised. But Ali does not stop there. The Islamic scholars, the ulama who have made Timbuktu famous throughout the Muslim world, become targets. They are perceived, whether correctly or not, as potential rivals to Ali's authority. They represent urban, foreign-influenced Islam, not the rural, traditional power base that supports the Sunni dynasty. The accounts from this period, written by the scholars themselves or their students, paint Ali as a monster. The Tariq al-Fattash, one of the great chronicle sources for Songhai history, describes massacres, forced conversions to traditional religious practices, the persecution of Islamic legal scholars. These are not neutral sources. They were written by the victims and their sympathizers, but they capture a fundamental truth. Sonni Ali ruled through fear as much as through strategic brilliance. Here is the paradox of the man. To his Songhai warriors, he is a hero. He expands their territory. He enriches them with plunder. He validates their traditional culture against the encroachment of foreign Islam. To the urban scholars and merchants, he is a tyrant, a barbarian who threatens the cosmopolitan civilization they have built. Both versions are true. History is rarely simple enough to offer us pure heroes or uncomplicated villains. 5 years after taking Timbuktu, Sonni Ali confronts a different kind of challenge. The city of Jenne sits on an inland delta of the Niger, protected by seasonal flooding that makes conventional assault impossible for much of the year. It is wealthy, independent, and has no intention of submitting to Songhai rule. What follows is a masterpiece of medieval siege warfare. Ali cannot storm the city. The geography makes that suicidal. He cannot starve it quickly. Jenne's control of the surrounding agricultural lands makes it nearly self-sufficient. So he does something that requires not just military power, but extraordinary political will and organizational capacity. He blockades the city for 7 years, 7 months, and 7 days. His war fleet, now numbering in the hundreds of vessels, forms a moving cordon around Jenne. Every trade route is cut. Every supply convoy is intercepted. The seasonal rhythms of the Niger, which normally bring commerce and prosperity, are weaponized. When the river floods and Jenne should be receiving goods from downstream, Songhai canoes patrol the waters. When the floods recede and Jenne should be trading with the agricultural settlements, Songhai troops control the land approaches. The siege becomes legendary, not for its violence, but for its relentlessness. Year after year, the pressure increases. Jenne's wealth drains away. Its political will erodes. Finally, in 1480, the city negotiates surrender. The terms are surprisingly generous. Ali understands that a destroyed Jenne is worth nothing, while a prosperous Jenne paying taxes to Gao is worth everything. The siege demonstrates something crucial about Sonni Ali's approach to empire building. He combines tactical brilliance with strategic patience. He is willing to invest years in a single objective if the outcome serves his larger vision. He understands that empires are not built in dramatic moments, but in the patient accumulation of power. As his reign progresses, Sonni Ali becomes a figure of profound contradiction. His military achievements are undeniable. He extends Songhai control over the entire middle Niger River Valley. He defeats the Mossy kingdoms to the south, preventing them from raiding Songhai territories. He pacifies the Fulani pastoralists, who move through the empire's lands with their cattle herds. He creates a military apparatus capable of fielding tens of thousands of warriors. But his relationship with Islam remains complicated, dangerous, and ultimately damaging to his historical legacy. He participates in Islamic rituals when politically useful. He employs Muslim administrators to run his bureaucracy. But he also maintains traditional religious practices, consults spirit priests, and shows open contempt for Islamic legal scholars who question his authority. The scholars, in turn, write the histories, and they do not forgive. The Tariq al-Sudan and the Tariq al-Fatash, the two great chronicles of Songhai history, written in the decades after the empire's fall, portray Ali as a villain, sometimes barely human. They accuse him of apostasy, of murder, of cruelty so extreme it borders on the supernatural. These texts became the primary sources for later historians, which means that for centuries, Sonni Ali the Great was remembered primarily as Sonni Ali the Tyrant. Modern scholarship has begun to rehabilitate his reputation, recognizing that the chronicles were written by his enemies and reflect their perspective, not objective truth. But the damage is done. Ali's military genius is overshadowed by the legend of his brutality. On November 6, 1492, the same year Columbus crosses the Atlantic, though neither event has any knowledge of the other, Sonni Ali dies under circumstances that remain disputed to this day. The official account claims he drowned while crossing a river. He was returning from a military campaign. The floodwaters were high, and the great warrior king was swept away. It has the tragic simplicity of truth. But there is another version. In this telling, Ali's death was no accident. One of his most trusted generals, a man named Muhammad Toure, orchestrated the assassination. Perhaps Ali drowned, but only after being pushed. Perhaps he was poisoned and his body disposed of in the river. Perhaps the entire story is a fabrication and he was killed in a more prosaic military coup. The truth is lost to history. What matters is what happens next. Sonni Ali's son, Sonni Baru, inherits the throne. His reign lasts less than a year. Muhammad Toure, the general implicated in Ali's death, challenges him for power. The army, faced with a choice between the untested son and the proven commander, chooses Muhammad. The Sunni dynasty, which has ruled the Songhai for centuries, ends in a coup, and the Songhai Empire enters its golden age. Muhammad Toure has a problem. He has seized power through military force, which makes him strong but not legitimate. In a society that values lineage and traditional authority, being a usurper is a dangerous position. He needs something more than military success. He needs a source of legitimacy that transcends the Songhai political system entirely. He finds it in Mecca. In 1496, just 3 years after seizing the throne, Muhammad departs on the Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca that every Muslim is obligated to undertake at least once if able. But this is not a humble pilgrim's journey. This is a calculated display of wealth and power designed to announce the Songhai Empire to the Islamic world. The accounts describe Muhammad traveling with an entourage of thousands. He brings with him 300,000 pieces of gold. Some sources say mithqals, others say dinars, but the quantity is staggering regardless of the specific denomination. He distributes this wealth with calculated generosity, gifts to scholars, donations to holy sites, support for communities along the route. By the time he reaches Mecca, his reputation precedes him. In the holy city, Muhammad meets with the Sharif of Mecca and, through him, establishes a connection to the wider world of Islamic scholarship and authority. When he returns to West Africa, he returns with something unprecedented: recognition from Mecca as the Caliph of the Sudan, the Caliph of the Land of the Blacks. The title is not merely honorific. It positions Muhammad, now known as Askia Muhammad, or Askia the Great, as the supreme Islamic authority in West Africa. It gives him religious legitimacy to match his military power. It transforms the Songhai Empire from a regional conquest state into a self-proclaimed caliphate, a legitimate part of the global Islamic community. The usurper has become, in the eyes of the Islamic world, divinely ordained. Askia Muhammad understands something that Sonni Ali, for all his military genius, either did not grasp or chose to ignore. Empires are not sustained by conquest alone. They require administration, organization, systematic governance. Military power opens doors, bureaucratic competence keeps them open. He restructures the empire along unprecedented lines for West Africa. The territory is divided into provinces, each governed by appointed officials rather than hereditary chiefs. These governors, drawn from the military, from merchant families, from the Islamic scholarly class, owe their positions to the Askia himself, not to local power bases. They can be promoted, transferred, or removed based on performance. A professional tax collection system replaces the ad hoc tribute extraction of previous regimes. Agricultural production, trade revenue, customs duties on Trans-Saharan caravans, all are systematically assessed and collected. The revenue funds a standing army, estimated at over 30,000 soldiers at its peak, which serves two purposes: external defense and internal enforcement of central authority. Weights and measures are standardized across the empire. Market regulations are enforced. A system of river inspectors monitors trade along the Niger. For the first time in West African history, you can travel from the salt mines of Taghaza in the deep Sahara to the gold-producing regions near the forest zone and encounter the same administrative apparatus, the same legal framework, the same predictable government structure. This is bureaucracy, not as dull necessity, but as revolutionary technology. It is what separates a kingdom from an empire, conquest from consolidation, the temporary from the enduring. Under Askia Muhammad's patronage, Timbuktu transforms from a prosperous trading city into one of the great intellectual centers of the medieval world. The University of Sankore, already famous, expands dramatically. At its peak, it hosts thousands of students studying Islamic law, theology, astronomy, mathematics, medicine, and philosophy. Scholars from Cairo, Baghdad, Morocco, and Spain make the journey to Timbuktu to study or teach. The city's reputation spreads across the Mediterranean and into the Islamic world as far as Persia. Books become the most valuable commodity in Timbuktu's markets. A rare manuscript on astronomy can fetch a higher price than gold or enslaved laborers. Private libraries number in the thousands of volumes. The city's scholars produce their own works, commentaries on the Quran, legal treatises, astronomical tables calibrated for West African latitudes, medical texts drawing on both Arabic and local herbal knowledge. This is not simply imitation of foreign learning. West African scholars are contributing to the global intellectual conversation of the Islamic world. They are debating points of Islamic law that scholars in Damascus care about. They are calculating planetary motions with instruments as sophisticated as those used in Cordoba. They are producing literature that will be copied and studied for centuries. The famous description of Timbuktu as having more scholars than merchants is hyperbole, but it captures a truth. In this city, at this moment, intellectual achievement is genuinely valued and supported by the state. Askia Muhammad does not neglect the military foundation of the empire, but he deploys it with more strategic calculation than his predecessor. His campaigns serve clear political and economic objectives, rather than simple territorial expansion. To the west, he extends Songhai control into the remnants of the Mali Empire, absorbing provinces that still nominally owe allegiance to Mali's weakened dynasty. This is less conquest than foreclosure, taking control of territories that Mali can no longer effectively govern. To the south, he conducts punitive expeditions against the Mossi kingdoms, not to conquer them permanently, but to establish Songhai military dominance and discourage raiding into imperial territory. The Mossi remain independent but chastened. To the north, he gains control of the vital Saharan salt mines at Takhaza through a combination of military pressure and diplomatic maneuvering. Salt from these mines, harvested from underground deposits by enslaved laborers working in brutal conditions, is as valuable as gold in the sub-Saharan economy. Controlling Takhaza means controlling one end of the Trans-Saharan trade system. To the east, he extends Songhai influence toward the Hausa city-states, establishing tributary relationships that bring those wealthy trading centers into the Songhai economic orbit without the expense of direct military occupation. By 1520, the Songhai Empire stretches over 1,000 miles from west to east and several hundred miles from north to south. It encompasses deserts, grasslands, and river valleys. It includes dozens of ethnic groups speaking different languages, practicing different religions, maintaining different customs. What holds it together is not cultural unity. That is a modern concept, largely irrelevant to medieval empires, but rather the systematic application of administrative power backed by credible military force. This is Askia Muhammad's true achievement. He creates a machine that functions without requiring constant personal intervention from the emperor. The empire can govern itself through its bureaucracy, defend itself through its standing army, sustain itself through its tax system, and legitimize itself through its religious and intellectual establishment. It is also a machine that will prove catastrophically fragile when challenged from within. In 1528, Askia Muhammad the Great is deposed by his own son, Musa. The official reason is the emperor's declining health. Muhammad is elderly, increasingly blind, no longer capable of the rigorous personal oversight that empire management requires, but the real reason is simpler and more brutal. Musa wants power, and he is willing to seize it from his own father. The coup is swift and relatively bloodless. The army accepts the transition. The bureaucracy continues functioning under new leadership. Muhammad is not killed. That would create a martyrdom problem, but is instead exiled to an island in the Niger River, blind and powerless, surrounded by mosquito-infested swamps. He lives there for 10 years, a cautionary tale about the limits of institutional power. He built a system designed to outlast any individual ruler. That system is now being used by his son to keep him imprisoned. When Muhammad finally dies in 1538, he is buried with imperial honors. The man who transformed the Songhai from a regional power into an empire, who brought bureaucratic sophistication to West African governance, who made Timbuktu famous across the Islamic world, dies as a prisoner of his own creation. And the empire he built begins its long, tragic slide toward collapse. Askia Musa's reign lasts 3 years. He is overthrown by his brother Muhammad Bengan in 1531. Muhammad Bengan rules for 6 years before being deposed by another brother, Ismail, in 1537. Ismail's reign barely lasts a year before yet another brother seizes power. This is not a succession crisis. This is a multi-generational civil war conducted through coups, assassinations, and palace intrigue. Each new Askia takes power with promises of stability and reform. Each new Askia discovers that the coalitions required to seize power are incompatible with the coalitions required to govern effectively. Each new Askia is vulnerable to the same fate that brought him to power. The pattern accelerates. Between 1528 and 1582, the Songhai Empire is ruled by 9 different Askias. Some reign for only months. Even the longer reigns are characterized by constant internal threats, rebellions in the provinces, and the erosion of central authority. The bureaucracy that Askia Muhammad built continues functioning, but it functions increasingly for its own benefit rather than for the empire's. Provincial governors become semi-independent, remitting less tax revenue to Gao, using imperial resources to build personal power bases. The standing army fragments into competing factions, backing different claimants to the throne. The intellectual life of Timbuktu continues. Scholars are remarkably good at maintaining their work, even as political structures crumble around them, but state patronage declines. The university at Sankore survives, but fewer students can afford to attend. The book trade continues, but fewer new works are commissioned. In 1539, Askia Ishak I takes power and manages something his predecessors could not, a stable, relatively peaceful reign lasting 37 years. He does this not through military brilliance or administrative genius, but through simple, pragmatic consolidation. He stops trying to expand the empire and focuses on maintaining what exists. He negotiates with powerful provincial governors rather than trying to replace them. He accepts a diminished imperial role in exchange for keeping the throne. Under Ishak I, the Songhai Empire reaches a kind of equilibrium, not growing, not reforming, not addressing its fundamental structural problems, but also not actively collapsing. It is the stability of stagnation, but for a generation exhausted by decades of civil war, even that looks attractive. When Ishak I dies in 1582, the empire he leaves behind is geographically large but politically hollow. It controls vast territories, but lacks the administrative cohesion to govern them effectively. It maintains a large army, but one increasingly divided by regional loyalties. It preserves its reputation as a center of Islamic learning, but depends on institutions that the state no longer adequately funds. Most critically, it faces a new external threat that its internal divisions have left it utterly unprepared to confront. To the north, across the Sahara, the Saadian dynasty has consolidated control over Morocco. Sultan Ahmad al-Mansur, the victorious, has ambitions that extend far beyond the Mediterranean coast. He looks south, toward the sources of the gold that have enriched West African empires for centuries, and he sees opportunity. The Trans-Saharan trade has made Morocco wealthy, but Morocco occupies only the northern terminus of the trade routes. The real wealth, the gold mines, the salt deposits, the markets of Timbuktu and Gao, lies in territories controlled by the Songhai Empire. Al-Mansur reasons correctly that controlling both ends of the trade routes would multiply Morocco's wealth dramatically. Initially, he tries diplomacy. In 1583, he sends envoys to the new Askia, Dawood, demanding control of the Taghaza salt mines. The demand is outrageous. Taghaza has been under Songhai control for nearly a century, but it is also a test. Will the Songhai defend their interests, or has the empire weakened to the point where it will yield to external pressure? Askia Dawood's response is defiant. He not only rejects the demand, but sends Al-Mansur a symbolic gift, a spear and a sword, the traditional instruments of war. The message is clear. If Morocco wants Taghaza, it will have to fight for it. Al-Mansur accepts the challenge, but he understands something that the Songhai do not. The nature of warfare is changing. Numbers, courage, and cavalry skill, the traditional determinants of West African military power, are about to become irrelevant. He begins recruiting European mercenaries, Spaniards, Portuguese, renegade Christians who have converted to Islam, and who bring with them knowledge of firearms, artillery, and the systematic military drill that makes firearms effective. He imports thousands of arquebuses, early muskets, and begins training his troops in their use. The Songhai, watching these preparations from across the Sahara, do not understand what they are witnessing. They have heard of firearms. Ottoman Turkey, with whom they have diplomatic relations, uses them. But the Songhai have no firearms of their own, no experience fighting against them, no tactical framework for understanding how they change the fundamental nature of combat. They are confident in their military strength. They control the largest empire in Africa. Their cavalry is legendary. Their infantry is numerous and brave. They have defeated every enemy they have faced for over a century. That confidence is about to kill them. In October 1590, a Moroccan army of approximately 4,000 men departs from Marrakesh. They are led by a Spanish eunuch named Judar Pasha, a former Christian slave who converted to Islam and rose through the Moroccan military hierarchy through competence and ruthlessness. Their objective is 1,500 miles away across the Sahara Desert. To reach the Songhai heartland, they must cross terrain that has killed countless caravans, survive months of march through waterless wastes, and arrive in fighting condition against an enemy that outnumbers them dramatically. It is one of the most audacious military expeditions in history, and it should fail. The Moroccan column includes not just soldiers but pack animals, support personnel, guides who know the desert routes, and, most critically, thousands of arquebuses, ammunition, and the specialized supplies needed to maintain firearms in desert conditions. They carry barrels of powder, lead for bullets, slow match for ignition, and replacement parts for weapons that can break or malfunction in heat and sand. The march is a nightmare. Wells run dry, animals die, men succumb to thirst, heat, and exhaustion. By the time the column emerges from the Sahara in early 1591, it has lost nearly a quarter of its strength to the desert itself. The survivors are exhausted, hungry, and far from their supply base. But they carry their arquebuses, and in this moment, that changes everything. When scouts bring word to Gao that a Moroccan army has crossed the Sahara, Askia Muhammad II, who has succeeded his father just months earlier, assembles the Songhai military might. 10,000 warriors, possibly more, the largest cavalry force in West Africa. Infantry equipped with swords, spears, and quilted armor that can deflect arrows and sword cuts. And 1,000 cattle positioned as a living barrier to break any enemy charge. The Songhai have never lost a major battle on their home territory. They outnumber the Moroccans dramatically. They are fighting to defend their heartland. Every strategic calculation suggests they should win. They do not understand the mathematics of gunpowder. The battle unfolds exactly as described in the opening scene of this documentary. The Moroccan arquebusiers kneel. They fire. The sound, that unprecedented world-ending crack of massed firearms, sends the Songhai cattle into a panic that destroys the defensive formation before the battle properly begins. The Moroccan forces do not need to charge. They do not need to engage in close combat where the Songhai's superior numbers and cavalry skill might matter. They simply maintain formation, reload, and fire. Reload and fire. Reload and fire. The Songhai cavalry attempts charges, but horses fear gunfire as much as cattle do. The charges break apart before reaching the Moroccan lines. Individual acts of courage, and the sources describe many, warriors riding directly into the gunfire, attempting to close the distance, dying in the attempt, cannot overcome the simple physics of lead balls traveling faster than horses can run. By the end of the day, the Songhai army is shattered. The casualties are catastrophic. Askia Muhammad II flees east, attempting to rally forces for continued resistance. The Moroccans, exhausted and low on ammunition, cannot pursue effectively. But the outcome is already determined. The Songhai Empire, built on military dominance, has just been defeated by a force 1/3 its size. The psychological impact is devastating. Word spreads across the empire. The Moroccan thunder tubes cannot be stopped. Resistance is futile. The Moroccan forces enter Timbuktu on May 14, 1591. They find a city of roughly 100,000 people, wealthy beyond anything most of the soldiers have ever seen, and completely unprepared for systematic looting. The sack is methodical. The wealthy merchant families are identified and their properties seized. The libraries, those famous collections of manuscripts that represent centuries of accumulated knowledge, are ransacked. Some books are shipped north to Morocco as prizes, others are destroyed. Many simply disappear, scattered and lost in the chaos. Scholars are rounded up. Some are executed as potential threats. Others are deported to Morocco, where their knowledge can serve the Saadian Sultan. The intellectual community that made Timbuktu famous is systematically dismantled. The city survives physically. The Moroccans need it as a base of operations, but its character is fundamentally altered. The cosmopolitan intellectual culture, the thriving book trade, the atmosphere of scholarly debate that made Timbuktu the Oxford of Africa, all of this withers under military occupation. The Moroccans discover what every successful invader eventually learns: conquering an empire is easier than governing one. They control the cities along the Niger, Gao, Timbuktu, Jenne, but cannot project power effectively into the rural territories. The Songhai bureaucracy, already weakened by decades of internal conflict, disintegrates entirely. Provincial governors declare independence or submit to local strongmen. The Trans-Saharan trade system, which depended on predictable governance and security, breaks down as competing warlords fight for control of trade routes. Juder Pasha and his successors attempt to establish a new administrative system, but they face insurmountable problems. They are too few to garrison the entire empire. They are cut off from Morocco by the Sahara crossing, making reinforcement difficult and expensive. They are foreigners in a land whose languages they do not speak, whose customs they do not understand, whose religious and ethnic divisions they cannot navigate. Within a generation, the Moroccan occupation dissolves into a patchwork of petty kingdoms, ruled by the descendants of the original invaders, who have married into local populations, adopted local customs, and lost contact with Morocco itself. These successor states fight among themselves, making and breaking alliances, rising and falling in cycles of violence that continue for decades. The unified empire that stretched 1,000 miles along the Niger River fragments into dozens of small polities. The administrative sophistication, the bureaucratic apparatus, the systematic governance that Askia Muhammad built, all of it collapses. West Africa enters a period that the chronicles describe as anarchy, a time when trade declined, cities shrank, and the achievements of the imperial age seemed to belong to a lost golden era. The Songhai Empire, which had endured for over a century as Africa's dominant power, effectively ends in a single afternoon at Tondibi. The story does not end on the battlefield. It does not end with the sack of Timbuktu or the collapse of imperial authority. It ends, or rather it continues, in the private libraries of modern-day Mali. In the 21st century, scholars and librarians in Timbuktu still protect manuscripts from the Songhai era. Some have been in the same families for 500 years, passed from generation to generation, preserved through colonial occupation, civil war, and most recently, jihadist invasion. When Islamic extremists occupied Timbuktu in 2012, local scholars smuggled thousands of manuscripts to safety, sometimes at risk of their own lives. These are not museum pieces. These are working documents of a living intellectual tradition. They include legal opinions still cited in West African Islamic law, astronomical tables still useful for calculating prayer times, medical texts whose herbal remedies are still practiced, poetry still recited and appreciated. The manuscripts prove something that the military history obscures. The Songhai Empire's greatest achievement was not territorial expansion or military dominance. It was the creation of an intellectual culture that refused to die, even when the political structure that supported it collapsed. When Moroccan arquebuses shattered the Songhai army at Tondibi, they did not destroy the scholars who could calculate planetary motions. When Juder Pasha's troops ransacked Timbuktu, they did not eliminate the students who had memorized legal treatises. When the empire fragmented into warring kingdoms, the books survived in private collections, in mosque libraries, in family homes. This is the legacy that endures, not the borders of an empire or the names of its emperors, but the simple, stubborn persistence of human knowledge. The Songhai Empire demonstrates both the power and the limits of political organization. At its peak under Askia Muhammad, it created a bureaucratic machine sophisticated enough to govern a territory larger than Western Europe. It established systematic administration where none had existed, It supported scholarship that contributed to the global intellectual conversation of the Islamic world. It achieved a level of organizational complexity that few medieval states anywhere could match. But it also reveals the fragility of such achievements. When the central authority weakened through succession crises, civil wars, and external pressure, the entire system proved shockingly vulnerable. The institutions that had seemed so solid dissolved rapidly. The administrative apparatus that had governed millions stopped functioning. The military power that had seemed invincible was destroyed in hours by a technological advantage it had not prepared for. The question the Songhai Empire poses to us is not simply what happened, but what remains. The empire fell, the territories were lost, the political institutions crumbled, but the intellectual tradition survived, adapted, and continues to this day. The manuscripts that Askia Muhammad's scholars produced are still being studied. The legal principles they debated still influence West African Islamic jurisprudence. The astronomical knowledge they refined still serves practical purposes. Perhaps this is the deeper lesson. Military power is temporary, political institutions are fragile, but knowledge, once created and shared, becomes extraordinarily difficult to destroy. The Moroccan invasion could defeat the Songhai army. It could not defeat the ideas in the minds of Timbuktu's scholars or the knowledge preserved in its books. When we studied the Songhai Empire, we are not simply examining a historical curiosity or adding another chapter to our understanding of African history. We are confronting fundamental questions about what makes civilizations rise, what causes them to fall, and what aspects of human achievement endure beyond the political structures that created them. The empire is gone. The books remain. And in that fact lies both a tragedy and a triumph. The Songhai Empire's story is not taught in most Western schools. Its emperors are not household names. Its battles are not commemorated in popular culture. But for over a century, it was larger, wealthier, and more sophisticated than most European kingdoms of the same period. While Renaissance Italy was fragmenting into competing city-states, the Songhai maintained a unified empire across territory that would dwarf the Italian peninsula. While European monarchs struggled with literacy, Timbuktu's scholars were producing original contributions to Islamic philosophy and science. This is not a minor footnote to world history. This is a major empire whose achievements and failures offer insights as relevant as those of Rome or Byzantium. It demonstrates that political sophistication, bureaucratic innovation, and intellectual achievement were not monopolies of any single civilization or region. It reveals that Africa's history before European colonization included empires as complex and capable as any in the medieval world. If you found this exploration of the Songhai Empire compelling, I encourage you to continue your own research. The Tariq al-Fatash and Tariq al-Sudan, despite their biases, remain essential primary sources, and modern translations are available. John Hunwick's work on Timbuktu's manuscripts provides accessible entry into the empire's intellectual life. Michael Gomez's African Dominion offers comprehensive analysis of the empire's political and social structure. More importantly, seek out the voices of West African scholars themselves. The manuscripts being preserved in Timbuktu are increasingly being digitized and made available to researchers worldwide. These are not Western interpretations of African history. They are African sources, written by African scholars, documenting African experiences. If this journey through the rise and fall of Africa's greatest medieval empire expanded your understanding of history, consider supporting this exploration by subscribing to this channel. History is not a collection of isolated stories. It's a web of interconnected narratives, and every episode we explore reveals new connections, new questions, new perspectives on the human experience. Share this video with anyone who believes that Africa lacked sophisticated political structures before European contact. Share it with anyone interested in how empires rise and fall. Share it with anyone who wants to understand how technological change can overthrow even the most powerful military forces. The Songhai Empire's story is your story, because it is part of the human story, a testament to what we can build, a warning about what we can lose, and a reminder that knowledge, once created, can survive the empires that produced it. The thunder that ended the empire at Tondibi still echoes. The manuscripts that preserve its intellectual legacy still exist. and the questions it poses about power, knowledge, and civilization still demand our attention. This has been the story of the Songhai Empire, Africa's greatest medieval power, destroyed in an afternoon, but preserved forever in the books its scholars refuse to let die. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep discovering the extraordinary complexity of our shared human past. And don't forget to comment the country you are watching from.